Hello everyone. Happy to stand in front of you to tell you about the project that we are just starting right now. So the Octant went live 3 weeks ago, and we are in the middle of the first epoch for the Octant Public Goods Funding. But before I come into details of what exactly Octant is and what we do, I have to figure out how to change slides. Okay. Now, so public goods is a really loaded term, and I don't want to spend much time into digging on the exact definition of public goods, especially as there is a pure public goods in a real life. But in our space, I think we are accustomed to using that term for the parts of the digital infrastructure that are critical for the functioning of our ecosystem, but which do not have a very straightforward model to generate revenue. And if you think about that, the lower you go into the stack, the more often it is the case. And sometimes you can see examples of the wildly successful projects that do not really have any intrinsic funding mechanism. And I would say even Ethereum is an example of such a project, because what we see with the Ethereum development right now and since the very beginning is just using the huge pile of gold, mostly by the Ethereum Foundation, but also by other parties, to finance the groundbreaking, very important research and development that does not bring any further profits for the creators other than increase of the value of ETH. So what is needed to fund public goods? I think there are two basic things. First, you need funds, obviously, and then you need an allocation mechanism to decide what gets funded. And of course, it is good if the funds are sustainable, and for allocation, it is good to have a decision mechanism that would ensure that you spend the limited funds you have in the reasonable way. This is, by the way, what economics is about, among other things. How do you utilize resources, limited resources? So as for sustainable funding, the source of funding, you could think about many things, going a little bit outside of the Web3 space. You could have what many projects have in this space, what Ethereum does, what Golem does since 2016. So you're gonna have a huge pile of gold, and you sit on that pile of gold and you just use that gold to build. Then you can have a taxation or a self-imposed taxation. So the taxation is what states do. A self-imposed taxation is what NGOs do. This is a charity, basically. But you can also create mechanism to create some surplus and capture that surplus, or you can have a capital income that is then channeled into public goods funding. In a way, this is also what some the charities do, foundations with a big capital income. So maybe a word about ourselves at that point. I represent Golem Foundation. We are a spin-off of the Golem project that was crowdfunded in 2016. We did one of the very first crowdfundings on Ethereum blockchain in November 2016. That was back before ICO were a scammy thing. We considered back then actually token sale of the way of funding public goods, and we considered ourselves kind of a public good. So we did it quite early, and we still have some ETH left. The Golem network is still built by the entity called Golem Factory, while Golem Foundation is a spin-off dedicated to building GLM, so our token use cases, and generally support the ecosystem. And yeah, and that's it. And we also have like 100,000 ETH that we decided we could try to use for that case. So basically GLM use cases and support of the ecosystem. And here is the idea. So we decided that we can generate some surplus through staking. We can capture part of that for public goods, and we can create incentives for participation and for self-imposed taxation. And here comes Octant, the project I would like to describe to you today. So what is Octant? Basically what we do, we stake our ETH, and we do that against GLM tokens that are locked by the users, by the holders. And we have linear relationship between GLM locked and rewards from the ETH staking that goes to the users. That means that if you lock, for example, 1% of GLM supply, then you are entitled to 1% of the staking reward from that 100,000 ETH staked, which sounds like a fair deal, basically. At the same time, you have to time lock your GLM, and you have to take actions on a time basis, which I will describe in a second, to participate in the system. And the trick is that we use a square root magic to decide about the amounts, because obviously not all the supply of GLM will be locked. Even not all the supply of the ETH is locked for ETH staking. So that would not be a case for Octant as well, in our opinion. But what we do, we transfer to Octant the square root of the percentage of GLM locked, which means that we create a surplus, which we call a matched reward, that can be allocated to projects, to public goods projects. And the trick is, and here is this allocation mechanism, that we decide, not we, user decides who gets funded, how much, with their own money. So they can keep this staking reward attributed to them for themselves, or they can self-tax themselves to pass that money to the projects. And if they do that, that project gets also part of the matching fund. This is all time-based, like a paste in the 90 days epochs, with a 2 weeks decision window. And there are some tiny details that make it, well, maybe before we go to the tiny details, I will just show you the picture with how it goes exactly, just to make sure you got it. So we stake ETH in Ethereum proof of stake. We've got accumulation of staking rewards. Then with that square root, some of it goes to Octant, some goes back to the Golem Foundation and actually come back to the pool. So we increase the amount of ETH staked epoch to epoch. And then out of this total rewards that goes to Octant, we have user rewards, and this is this linear entitlement to your reward. If you lock 1% of GLM, you get 1% of the user rewards, all the rewards accumulated in staking, and the rest go to matched rewards. And the user can either claim the rewards for themselves, but they can also do the donation or a self-imposed taxation to the projects. And this is supplemented with the match funding. And if user takes no decision, then user rewards go back to the pool. And also if the users donate to the project that does not cross the minimum funding threshold, then also that funds come back to the Golem Foundation. And this is and to the pool. This is basically designed to promote activity. So even if you are interested in your rewards only, you don't want to support any public goods projects, you still have to come once in a while to the app and click that, yeah, I'm donating 0 to all the projects, I'm taking everything to myself. So you're at least exposed to the possibility of funding cool projects. So yeah, those tiny details. Once again, user has to lock GLM or gets nothing. User has to take action or gets nothing. And this is like I think important design detail. You not only like lock and then accumulate your rewards and don't give don't care about what's going on. You have like once in a while check what's going on and consciously say, yeah, I'm not giving anything of my money to all those great projects. And then we have like a square root magic. So the less GLM locked are in total, the bigger is the leverage of the matching fund. I think I have like the chart for that. So at the low levels of the total GLM locked, like the matched rewards fund is like a really huge compared to user rewards. And also, of course, like what goes to back to staking is also pretty significant. So I think this is like the mechanism design that creates like a really great incentives, because if people are not really interested in the project, which may happen, then like the individual impact of the person that actually comes in is really huge. And also the amount of funding that comes back to the pool and increase the funds for the next rounds is also quite substantial, making like all the future runs more interesting. The other part of that is that the less people allocate to projects, the bigger the leverage of the matching fund, obviously. So imagine a situation that no one wants to fund anything, and then you donate just one way. And that way, one way gets like the matched fund of like, say, 200 ETH, which is like a realistic scenario with the numbers we are operating on. So all of a sudden you got like a incredible leverage. So with one way you're able to really fund something substantial. But then other may notice and donate not one way, but 10 ways and 10 G ways or 1 ETH. And then the game starts, like who gives more. And as the allocation window has 2 weeks, you can observe the other people's decisions and like compete into like which projects get funded how. So yeah, this is the chart that shows you like the matched reward as a percentage of the user reward gives like a really huge leverage, especially at the smaller percentage of GLM locked in Octant. So that is like how it is designed, where we are at the moment. We have finalized Epoch 0 in July. That was basically like community bootstrapping event. We have distributed $1 million to the 10 great projects. Like I would say Gitcoin did best, but also others get substantial funding. So we had Gitcoin, we had Givet, we have ETHStaker, Kernel, DAO Drops, ClearFund, Protocol Guilds, Ethereum Herders, Super Modular, and Drips. And those projects are also like the first projects that were obviously like this list is curated by us at the moment. So they made it to Epoch 1. Going forward, we plan that this list will be in fact curated by the users in consecutive epochs. We also plan to expand that to like 2 or 3 dozens of projects. So we are still willing to add more projects into what gets funded. Epoch 1 started on 8th of August, and since that time you can time lock your GLMs to have like the voting rights to start accumulating your individual reward. This is, by the way, like a time average, so you can join at any time. And if you join later, then for the given epoch, just your like the average will be smaller, and the locking of GLM is like totally non-custodial. So the only thing we do, we check the average of the GLM locked in the given epoch, and we don't have any custody on the people's tokens. And well, of course, like this is like the only claim right now that we are staking 100 1,000 ETH, but our 3,125 validators are becoming active right now and should be all active by tomorrow. So this is happening. You can check it live on the Beacon chain. And we have already like a 28.6 million GLM locked, which is almost like a 3% of the total GLM supply, or like it comes from almost like a 500 unique addresses. Epoch 1 will end on the 19th of October, and then the first allocation window will start. So then users will be able to claim their rewards, allocate to projects, and it will last until the 2nd of November. As you can see, that first epoch is a little bit shorter than all the next epochs. That will be like a 90 days each. Yes, we have also some like plans, short and medium term. First, we are thinking about the ways how we could curate the projects the list of projects that Octant is to support in a more inclusive way, in a way that would involve community. And we plan like a snapshot votes on which projects should be whitelisted. As for the listing projects, we plan to do that on the basis of the maximum number of projects in the epoch, based on the forecast of funding. So basically, if the projects do not cross the minimum funding threshold in the round, or in the epoch, or in the 2 consecutive epochs, we haven't decided yet, then will be removed from the list, because it means probably that the users are not really interested in funding them, and that will open the places for the other projects to be voted on by the community and added to the list. We also see the Octant as the great platform for experiments with the allocation mechanism, voting mechanism. So what we have at the moment is like a pretty straightforward. I will perhaps show you like this is one thing you can say about Octant that sometimes people notice and don't really like. So Octant is the plutocracy by design at the moment. So basically, the more GLM you lock, the more voting power you have. And of course, in a way, that's the result of the whole design. And that design, at least in part, has to be like that, because after all, Octant is GLM use case. But we believe there are ways around that, because with the proof of uniqueness, we can experiment with the more fancy decision mechanism, namely like quadratic voting or quadratic funding. I will not like come into details why I use both terms, although this is like a funding actually. But anyway, that would make the like a plutocratic dimension of Octant much smaller. But also like we can think about like other implementations that are not GLM oriented, that would not be that plutocratic. And I'm not saying about ourselves at the moment, but other potential futures, potential uses of that idea, where the source of the voting power is not a tradable token, but something else, like the usage or like a social credit. Okay, I started to jumping among slides, but I will find myself. Yes. We are also thinking about like having like a much more sophisticated funding mechanism, because like at the moment this is like a pretty basic. So you are a project, you ask for money, and you either make it above the minimum threshold or not, and then you get the money. And of course, like in a system like that, you be this asking for more individual approach, so that you can fund like the one-off project with the maximum funding, so you can cap the funding, or that you have like a perpetual funding, but which is somehow connected to the fulfilling milestones, or that out of the pile of money generated to the project by Octant, the project can grow, but under like a certain circumstances. So I think this is all that we can explore along the path of expanding what we build, with the, of course, like a great community that we want to create, like around that, with this like a regenerative approach to building like a great Web3 ecosystem. And I think once we are there, we can generate like more and more ideas of how that approach can be used for building great things. As for the long-term plans, I don't really have a slide about that, but I think that Octant is one of the signs that this governance and public goods funding movement in Web3 is getting momentum. And if you think about all the useful things that then we can, as the space, invent and give to the world, this has a huge potential, and this can be used outside of the Web3 funding as well. We already have submissions from like great projects from outside of the Web3 that are really interested in that kind of funding, and I believe that going forward, especially once the crypto winter is over, we can have, as a Web3 space, as a Ethereum space, more impact on what's going on, not only in Web3, but also in our immediate and further surrounding. So if you think about, for example, like a great software projects that are not necessarily related to Web3, but are still about preserving freedom, privacy, and other values that we share, that's something that we can build with them. Also, like a Web3 space is great in creating value out of the thin air, which is sometimes like a very bad thing if you do that in a degenerative way. But I think it's also like a huge potential of like building like great things with a huge potential also outside of the Web3, if we only think about that as the finding mechanism to coordinate our actions to do great things. So, just to summarize Octant, what is good about it? I think this design, even if we limit it to what I already presented as what is happening, is pretty sustainable. So actually we have like a minimal staking risk, and apart from that we can go forward with that for a while, I believe. Also, like we did what we could, and we will continue to think about things that will force users into being at least somehow active. So this is not like there's just the passive yield machine, but rather a way of drawing people into what's the most valuable in our space. Also, I think that at least in theory, this mechanism promotes some kind of equilibrium with non-zero contributions from users. This is explaining this example when I show you that at the beginning with the minimal contribution from the user, you can get like a huge leverage on your funds. So I even believe that we can find some like a natural self-taxation rate with that design. And I'm really curious to see at the end of the epoch 1 allocation, like what was the self-taxation in the first epoch. But even if that self-imposed taxation level is not very high, still this is sustainable thanks to like matched fund design. And as I said, we see Octant as a platform for experiments with the allocation mechanism, with voting mechanism, and with like a building like a public goods. So, if you want to learn more, I invite you to Docs Octant app, or you can jump directly to octant.app, see the list of the projects that we are supporting in the first epoch, perhaps doc some GLM. Yeah, and I guess that's it. Thank you very much, and I made it in a way that we will still have like 5 minutes for questions, I believe. Thank you, I'm flattered, but I would prefer some questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, sure.
Here, let me give you the... That's for the recording.
In that design, you have linked user activity with user reward.
Yeah.
I don't recall I have seen such a solution before.
Yeah.
Does it?
Well, yeah, I don't think so. Like usually you have to take the action in the beginning, but then you can just hodl and that's it. In that design, you have like at least at the moment, every 90 days you have to take an action during like a 2 weeks window, and you will. Of course, you will not lose your locked GLM if you do not take the action, but you will do not get any rewards. So yeah, I think that's a pretty nasty idea. Yeah.
Yeah, very nice, very tricky and very nice. It solves so-called governance apathy problem. Actually.
Well, like as I said, like people can just opt out from the governance and take everything for themselves. But then at least, they take that decision. So it's not that you do not go to the referendum. You go to the referendum and you say, I'm not participating.
Yeah.
There you are.
So my question is, could you please open source and package the amazing CubesOS stack for like the validator thing that you did, like for that amount of validators, just, priceless for people out there that are running like more validators. It would be awesome if that would be accessible for everyone.
Yes, we definitely plan to do that. So there was a presentation about that yesterday on the workshop. You can contact us also if you have any questions on that specific regard, and we will do whatever we can to help. But that was always planned. But as always with that kind of project, our focus so far was on getting all those validators working, not get slashed, not get any penalties for missing attestations. So that's our focus at the moment. We may want to experiment with other clients also in the coming weeks, but this is on our roadmap definitely to have that all published. And of course, this is like I believe if you have like a convenience versus security slider, we are a little bit on the security rather than convenience side with that setup. We figure that that's like the only proper approach with that kind of money. But seems it is really working all right so far. As I said, like the validators, like we started running validators. First validators were active at the end of July, but the majority of them is coming online only now. So we are still like in a process of hardening everything and checking if that's working all right.
Yeah, thank you. This question was like meant as my vote as please do that. Like it's important.
Yeah,
thank you.
That's for sure. Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you very much.